Tracy, thank you so much. Well, I guess the big question is a green wave, thanks to the good economy, going to actually beat out that big government wave pushed by Democratic socialists that's going on right now? Joining me right now for the panel, we have Democratic strategist Rochelle Ritchie, we have media business analyst Dan Geltrude, former New York Congresswoman Nan Hayworth, and Fox News contributor Katherine Timpf. Good to see you all.
Good morning. Trish.
Nan, starting with you. I mean, the economy matters to people.
Absolutely. Well,
people tend to vote their pocketbooks. Is it going to matter enough come midterms?
You know, we have all the metrics, obviously, in terms of job growth, in terms of record unemployment among communities of color. Folks who haven't been participating in the job market for many years under the previous administration now are coming back in, thank goodness. Consumer confidence is up. So attitudinally, people understand, and they give the president high marks on his management of the economy. So those things should matter. And the fact that Democratic socialists and Democratic socialist-backed candidates did poorly in Democratic primaries also indicates that people understand that we need a vigorous free market economy.
Rochelle, is the socialist platform hurting the Democratic Party right now?
Well, look, I'll say this. I definitely do not like the socialist platform that we're seeing right now coming out of the Democratic Party. But, you know, Republicans love to boast about the unemployment rate, which is great. But what they're not sharing with the American people is the fact that underemployment is still pretty high. I mean, 33% of people with college degrees are underemployed. And I know that you mentioned the unemployment rate for African Americans. Well, what's not being mentioned is the fact that that 83% of African Americans are still unemployed compared to whites. And unemployment for African Americans has actually increased over the last 3 months. In May, it was 5.9. In June, it was 6.5. In July, it was 6.6. And I think particularly for African American voters, the bombastic rhetoric that we tend to see from President Trump, and the fact that he is more willing to attack NFL players and not say anything
really? Wow, okay.
about...
So you see that as a yeah, I know where you're going with this, because unfortunately we see over and over again the left wants to paint him as racist. Because that is exactly what you guys do. Because over and over again you see economic data that's good.
As you mentioned, economic data that is good. However, it's a misrepresentation of the facts. Black people in this country are still relatively higher.
I think the president would differ with you. He did tweet out this morning, I am proud to have fought for and secured the lowest African American and Hispanic unemployment rates in history. Now I'm pushing for prison reform to give people who have paid their debt to society a second chance. I will never stop fighting for all Americans. Dan, going to you for a moment, because one of my frustrations right now with the political environment we're in is that people are not looking at policy, they're not looking at facts, they're trying to make this very emotional. So they're going to paint whoever they can into whatever box they can, including this president. And that's an attempt to rally the base and get them emotionally connected to midterms. Is that going to work, or are people going to say, like Nan said, I'm better off today than I was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Well, you're exactly right about these elections are going to be about emotion, unfortunately. And I think what we have to realize, people are much more motivated to go out and vote against something than to go out and vote for something. So we have this great economy. People are satisfied. So is that going to make them lazy when it comes to going to the polls? And I think that's what this election, the midterm elections, is going to be about. Remember this. This is not a national election. This is a series of local elections. So you're going to have local issues that are going to play pretty significantly into what happens in all these seats in Congress.
But see, Pat, isn't this in part perhaps why we're seeing the border issue really get inflamed right now? Because again, as Dan says, people, they want to have something that they're connected to emotionally. So whether it's, you know, this president is a racist, therefore you need to vote him out of office and the Republicans out of office, or whether it's, you know, we're going to open up our borders and people are going to flood in, there's sort of a fear factor, I think, on both sides.
Right. There is a great deal of passion, but that is on both sides. We always hear about this blue wave and that all these Democrats are going to want to get out. And I'm sure a lot of them that didn't vote in 2016 are going to get out there and vote because of what happened in 2016. But on the Republican side, we're seeing the highest voter enthusiasm before almost every midterm election dating back to 1994, with one exception in June 2010. So there's also a lot of passion and a lot of wanting to get up and go on the Republican side as well. Yeah. So if it is about emotion, it is about passion. passion. It's not so easy to just say, okay, blue wave, look at all these emotions. We don't hear as much about the emotions on the Republican side and the passion on the Republican side that is backed up by data.
All right, I want to get to this other issue right now, and that's a conservative commentator, Ben Shapiro, who was out there challenging Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez to a debate. He offered her $10,000 for her campaign or her charity, whatever she wanted. Well, you know what she did? She called his attempt to debate her catcalling. I mean, it didn't even make sense to me. I had to double check. Wait, catcalling?
No.
I asked about this.
It's like. Yeah. I've never had someone say, hey, I'm going to debate you on the issues. That'd be great.
Well, so I asked Ben about this yesterday. Here's his response. Take a look.
The fact that she feels the necessity to go to this particular card, right, to play the I'm a female and therefore I'm being victimized, this is like catcalling. The fact she goes there instead of just saying, you know what, I'm not interested in debate, the reason she didn't say the latter is because she didn't want to look like she was afraid.
She's afraid. I get that. But what bugs me the most is the victimization here that's going on. I mean, to say that he's catcalling when he's just asking you to have an intellectual conversation, what's that about, Rochelle?
You know, I don't agree. It's not catcalling. Like Kat said, we live in New York City. Yeah. That's not catcalling.
No. So what is it? Look at me, I'm a victim.
The only thing she's a victim of is her own foolishness. And I think I give her enough credit to know that versus Ben Shapiro, she would lose pretty severely.
Yeah. Not catcalling.
No, not catcalling. She clearly is afraid to debate him. She has had difficulty in television interviews before when she's actually pressed on, okay, how would you pay for this? Or, okay, how exactly does this work? She kind of flounders a little bit.
Gotcha. All right, we're going to leave it there. Is President Trump nearing a sit-down with special counsel Bob Mueller? Former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer was questioned by his legal team. He joins us at 11 a.m. But up next, two conservatives shouted down by far-left protesters. Now one is speaking up. Charlie Kirk is next. Arizona Republican Congressman Andy Biggs rolling out new legislation to help pay for the border wall. It would penalize foreign aid to Mexico and to other countries by $2,000 for every illegal immigrant apprehended in the United States. Is this a good way to help finance the wall? Back with me, Nan Hayworth, Rochelle Ritchie, Dan Geltrude, and Katherine Timpf. Kat, starting with you, seems kind of innovative. Would it work?
I think it's definitely very innovative. I am someone who personally thinks that there are better ways we could deal with border security than the wall. I think that maybe removing some of the welfare incentives would help us save money rather than having to spend money on a wall, especially because people can do things like overstay their visas anyways, which is more common. But it's certainly an innovative idea. I don't think it would actually ever get through because there'd be all these stories about countries needing this funds for this or for that. So I don't think it would actually be a feasible solution, but it's definitely innovative.
Yeah, I mean, could you just find these other countries, Dan, and say, hey, you know, you got to have some responsibility and skin in the game, too. Don't allow people to come here illegally.
Let's say it is possible for us to fine other countries. Let's look at this mathematically. The Department of Homeland Security is talking about the cost of the wall being $20 billion. But let's assume the president can build it much faster and under budget, and he can do it for $10 billion.
You're telling me $2,000 isn't enough.
$2,000 means now you're talking about 5 million people we have to charge back for. Mathematically, it doesn't work. We need to find another way. Clearly, Mexico is not paying. We need a plan B.
But it would be a matter of subtracting from what we give to these other nations. I thought it was an intriguing idea as well and would be theoretically budget neutral.
Yeah, and by the way, we should point out, it's not intended to pay for the whole shebang. It's just going to help offset
it offers something. I mean, you're talking $800 million a year with if you're doing $2,000 per illegal immigrant that comes over into the country. I agree. I think it's an idea. I mean, first of all, Trump promised us that we would not have to fund the wall. So if they're going to put the bill in somebody else's pocket, then, you know, absolutely. But one of my concerns about this is what's going to happen to these people when they are deported back home. Is that country going to then fine them or imprison them or worse as a result of them coming into the United States illegally and then costing them money? I just wonder if they would, you know, somehow kind of go after those people that are entering the United States illegally. Not saying the United States would, but Mexico or other countries.
Nan and Jan, they're both smiling. Yeah, it's
well, it's not, but I think you want to be a little, you know, have some humanity about the fact that these people could end up being, you know, punished when they are deported back home.
I agree with the compassion, but I think we have to kind of work on things at home here.
Right.
The whole point about this illegal immigration is it's illegal. They're not supposed to be here. You got to get in line. You got to do it the right way.
I mean, look, you can't just say, hey, we're going to take everyone from Mexico, right? I mean, the economics of that would never actually work. And as much as you want to help the world, we need to be focused on people back home. That's the priority. I mean, at least for this administration. And so I question whether the Democratic Party, as much as they're pushing this whole borderless society, Kat, whether that's really going to play in Peoria, as they say.
And I don't think that most Americans want a borderless society.
Correct.
I think that the Democratic Party or certain members of it have gone so far left, saying just abolish ICE entirely, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just very interesting that no one was saying these things when Obama was president. It's just as a bit reactionary against Trump. But I don't think that it represents how most Americans feel, even Americans who are liberal.
And we have to remember that the Senate Democrats actually offered to fund $25 billion of the wall in exchange for 1.8 million undocumented DACA recipients being put on a path to legal citizenship. So it was there, but, you know, they didn't go for it.
Do you think that's ever really something that could happen or should happen? I mean, all the people that are here illegally right now, if you said, you know what, we're going to just grandfather you in, Nan, and you have a path to citizenship. We're going to make you all U.S. citizens. You can pay your taxes, et cetera. Doesn't that provide sort of a perverse incentive going forward for other people that think, well, maybe I'll come here because there's a chance that I might have a path to citizenship someday?
Trish, it could. And I think, you know, your point in Kat's well taken about the fact that we, especially if someone's designated an asylee or a refugee, they get a generous package of social welfare benefits, and that is an inducement, and that is costly to hardworking Americans who are trying to feed their own families. To the president's credit, through deregulation, tax cuts, and the GOP majorities in Congress, they have grown the economy so that we can be more welcoming. I would be happy, actually, to have an arrangement in which we provided for a pathway that would net be less disruptive than trying to deport people. But it has to be. It won't work at all, Trish, unless we have border security. And that's Representative Biggs' whole point. If we don't have secure borders, and including our ports of entry all across the nation and visa security, it won't work.
It's wild that this country's being criticized for this, right? That somehow we may not be as humane as others because we're not willing to take everyone in. But, you know, let me tell you, you're not getting into Switzerland to live there and get any benefits off of, you know, New Zealand, other countries. It's very, very hard to get citizenship in any of those places. So,
Trish,
anyway,
one of the issues is great economy, and we're putting so many people back to work. Now we're short workers. So maybe now is the time to consider this plan.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're nonviolent and you want to contribute to the economy, I think that you should be able to immigrate here legally, and I think it should be a little easier to do that.
Like just, you know, just make it easier and take people in the right way as opposed to all this nonsense.
Hey, we all agree. How about
all right. Well, on that note, thank you guys. Good to see you all. All right, new season, same controversy. Several NFL players protesting the national anthem again this week as the official preseason kicks off. A former player who says, knock it off. Burgess Owens, he's next.
Whatever happened to draining the swamp? Was the plan to drain the old swamp to make room for a bigger, beautiful one, maybe to go around the wall like a Trump moat of miscreants?
There's such a culture of corruption there. Not only has that swamp not been drained, this administration is building all over it.
It also raises this question, Katie, about draining the swamp. That was what President Trump vowed to do once he got into office. And this is a key ally who, on the face of it, these charges would suggest is engaging in very swampy behavior.
Donald Trump ran for president on draining the swamp. This behavior, alleged behavior, in my word, is swamp-tastic.
All right, some members of the media trying to tie New York Republican Congressman Chris Collins to President Trump and saying Trump's Washington is swampier than ever. Just this morning, Congressman Collins announced he is suspending his re-election campaign. Back with us, we have the panel: Rochelle Ritchie, Dan Geltrude, Nan Hayworth, and Katherine Timpf. I should say former Congresswoman Nan Hayworth. What do you think of this?
Chris Collins clearly did something wrong, but the coverage has been disproportionate compared to, let's say, what Bob Menendez got, who is a deeply suspicious senator. Chaka Fattah, fellow member of Congress, Corinne Brown, both convicted of fraud, barely covered by the networks. This has nothing whatsoever to do with President Trump. Nothing.
But they want to pin,
of course.
He campaigned on trying to get rid of the swamp. So what are you doing with swamp creatures there, Dan?
Well, I think that you have people are going to be subject to corruption. It doesn't matter if there's a D or an R associated with them. This is things that happen. Look, we should recognize there's a presumption of innocence here, no matter who these allegations are against. But this is a bad one because insider trading, that's based on trust. That's the core of it. So to violate that trust, the fiduciary responsibility as a board member and release that information to family members and friends so that they can trade and avoid losses. This is classic insider trading.
Rochelle, why don't we just say, hey, you know what? You're in Congress. We're not going to allow you to be able to trade. You're going to just keep your money over here. Let it earn a little interest in U.S. Treasuries and don't go trading stocks, especially ones that you're on the board of.
Then don't raise interest rates. But
well, look, I honestly think that we're doing more of exposing the swamp than necessarily draining the swamp with what we're seeing in D.C. And I think that what you're seeing from the press, honestly, I was a former reporter of 12 years, and part of our job as journalists is to shine a light on dark places, and that's what we're seeing. Obviously, the coverage is going to be one-sided. We kind of live in a society now where that is what the press, you have one side that's more conservative, one side that's more liberal. But
there's a lot more liberals for whatever reason, right? In the press, I mean, I think we can very fairly say that. And Kat, you've certainly seen this in your experience there at National Review. A lot more on the left than are on the right. And unfortunately, many are trying to really push their own agenda, even though they say, no, totally neutral.
Can't we just all unite and be anti-insider trading, whether anti-fraud? People ask me, hey, Kat, why don't you trust the government? Well, because of the government. That's why I don't trust the government. There's people who get power and then they abuse it and they take advantage of people. And I don't care whether you're a Republican or Democrat. I completely agree with you on that. This is bad. He did a bad thing, and I don't think it matters so much whether he's a Republican or not. I think that all of us can say that this was bad. But the same thing with Menendez, bad. I think we should all say this is a bad thing. I don't get why this is so complicated. I really don't understand. I really don't understand it. Everything is so partisan now. Everything is like you're rooting for the other team to be insider trading because that means that you can make fun of them for it. No, how about just can we just be anti-insider trading? Can that be a take?
I'm with that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Right? We can agree on that for sure.
And when you look at it, the country right now, as far as voters, they're really split on how corrupt Republicans are and how corrupt Democrats are. And it's almost even, 54% for Republicans, 46% for Democrats. So, I mean, I agree. I mean, I get tired of hearing about it.
You know what I do think, though? I think people are tired of it, and increasingly we're going to get away from that party-specific identity, because you think of the crossover, right? All the sort of blue-collar union workers that voted for Trump in 2016. You know, if there's a path to citizenship for a lot of Hispanics that are coming here, that may be here illegally, then again, the Republican Party, and this must make some Democrats nervous, but the Republican Party,
I'd love to see the Republicans
might embrace them. And so there's just a lot of changes going on right now, and I just question whether people are going to really vote for what they believe in going forward, as opposed to a specific platform that a party has.
People need to vote for what is best, and not vote red or blue. Vote for what is best.
Agree. What does Neil always say? Not red, not blue. How about green? Okay, that does it.
People take power away from
Cavuto Live. Neil's going to be back next week, everyone, and be sure to join me. I am on Fox Business every day, 2 p.m. for the Intelligence Report. I do hope to see you there. Keep it right here on Fox News for now.